right, welcome to another night of Wednesday Night Live. I know it's been a little while since we've been together, but welcome to Wednesday Night Live, hosted by Pioneer Baptist Church. I guess hosted by me, Edwin Lugo, the pastor of Pioneer Baptist Church, presented by Pioneer Baptist Church. I was about to say every Wednesday, but that has not been the case. We did not have power or anything last week, but we're back this week for new content and a Bible study through the book of Ecclesiastes. Again, since this has been a little bit, and what I see on my computer is a little different than what you see at home. I know through the countdown the video is working, but I get some weird things that show up, like Facebook is telling me the video isn't working, and YouTube gives me a warning about a few things, but then people say they can see it just fine. So, to be a big help to me, this is not just to give me a big head, this is to let me know that I'm not just talking to a camera, but there are actually people out there that hear it and see it. If you could just give me a thumbs up, let me know you're here, let me know everything is going well, and so just so we can know that, it would be really awesome. I really do appreciate you tuning in tonight, and I think it's going to be a good time. I missed doing it last week. I really did. I missed doing it last week with you. I was excited to be a part of it, and hated that we could not be together. All right, so my wife downstairs at least gives me a thumbs up, and so that is good to know. Good. All right, wonderful, awesome. Great to have the Millers, great to have the Tuckers, the Kellys, the Lugos. If you are tuning in, let us know. We know we have a few viewers here on Facebook. We have a few viewers here. All right, I'm getting the thumbs up now. So far, so good. Say the Claytons. So glad you guys are here as well. As is. Most of you, it looks like, since you missed a week, you're ready to get on the keyboard there and let us know what's going on, so I appreciate that. Let's jump in. No reason to waste any time. We're going to go to our very first piece of content here, the bestest. We have found out all sorts of the bestest around. Best place to go to relax. Best, let's see here. What do we have? Best dessert. Cross. A little bit more specific with one of the ones that we talked about before, and that is this. That is the bestest ice cream. What the best flavor of ice cream is, and where to get it. So maybe there's a certain flavor you like, but it's not. Let's just, for example, chocolate. But maybe you know a very specific place that has the best chocolate ice cream. Tell me that, because obviously, getting chocolate ice cream, store versus getting it at Baskin and Robbins, getting it at Cold Stone versus getting it at Salt and Straw or some other place you like to get ice cream. Tell me, where's the best ice cream and where do you get it? The best ice cream and where you get it. I'm going to wait just a second here, see if we get any answers coming across. Honestly, and this may surprise some of you, I'm not a big ice cream eater. I'll eat it every once in a while. My mom loves it. When she comes to visit, she'll buy like 4 quarts of it for a 2-day visit. But I'll eat it every once in a while, but I'm not a huge ice cream fan. All right, here we go. We got a couple coming in. My son Gabe says olive oil ice cream from Salt and Straw. He does. He loves himself some olive oil ice cream from Salt and Straw. Sounds very plain and very normal, but it is actually pretty good. Cassie says Breyers coffee and Haagen-Dazs chocolate. Those are both very, very good as well. Cheesecake ice cream at Cold Stone. You know what, Kristen? I'm a big fan of cheesecake ice cream as well. And that sounds really, really, really good. Let's see here. Ooh, Eric and Fred, you guys should go at times to Tillamook together to get the strawberry. Oh, it's a very lemonade, Fred. Okay. Strawberry lemonade status, and that does sound very good from Tillamook. Eric says strawberry ice cream at Tillamook sounds delicious as well. Let's see. Daniel says cold brew cashew, praline, or the honey lavender from Salt and Straw. All sound very good. Tillamook butter pecan. You know what, Terry Cross? I think my mom's all-time favorite ice cream, even though she gets a bunch of different things now. I remember growing up, butter pecan was loved it. Tillamook white chocolate raspberry or lavender honey. There's another lavender honey at Salt and Straw that people are big fans of. Cassie says my video is stuck and the audio is glitchy on YouTube. There's not a whole lot I can do about that. Maybe if you're on YouTube and that is the case, switching over to Facebook may be the best bet. Unless it's the same thing on Facebook. I really don't know. Because it's weird because it tells me I have excellent connection on YouTube. And so I apologize about that. Hopefully it'll kick in here pretty soon. And everything will be alright. Let's see here. Tillamook muds. Okay, Cassie said never mind. It's good now. Tillamook mudslides. Say the heart. I agree. I've had their mudslide and it is very delicious. That is right down my aisle. Let's see here. If you ever get the chance, go to Salt and Straw around Thanksgiving and get their Thanksgiving ice cream. I know it might sound gross, but it's like mashed potatoes and turkey ice cream or cranberry and turkey ice cream. It's actually really, really good. They take chicken skin and they fry it and then they caramelize it, or they actually turn it into a brittle. So it's sweet and salty, and then they put it in the ice cream. It is really, really good as well, so try that out. A lot of people are coming to the the home state, Tillamook. George says, I agree, Tillamook anything is usually done right, and I agree as well. Love Tillamook ice cream. Enjoy going to get it. So, it sounds like for a lot of people, your local places such as Tillamook or possibly Salt and Straw, I have some wonderful places to get ice cream around here. So, if you get the chance to do it, go ahead and do that. That was an okay sign. Just in case anybody's wondering, that's not a white supremacist sign. I know there's some people out there that somebody might just turn off the video now that I just did that. That's not the case. That was an okay. Okay, sounds good. Anyway, moving on to the next segment here, life hacks. Here's a life hack for you. The funny thing is, people don't send a whole lot of things through the mail anymore. But I have done this, and I've actually done this recently. Have you ever gone to send something through the mail, sealed the envelope, and then realized there was something else you wanted to put in that envelope? What do you do? Well, it's like, sometimes you try to pry it back open and try to get it back out. Josiah says s'more. That's right, just in case you didn't know. Crumble Cookie actually does ice cream as well. I think they take their old cookies and crumble it up into their ice cream and serve it. It's pretty good. Josiah says the s'more ice cream at Cookie Crumble's good. But anyway, back to the envelopes. Envelope, sealed, ready to go, ready to mail, and then you realize you forgot to put something in the envelope. Here is a life hack in case you ever get in that situation again. If you seal an envelope and then realize you forgot to include something in it, just place the sealed envelope in the freezer for an hour or two, and it will unseal easily. Just stick it in there there you go. See, the Clayton said it. They knew it. Life hack. Put it in the freezer. Put it in there for just a little while, and it is ready to go. You can unseal it, stick whatever you need to get in there, and go again. So there you go. Hopefully that can be helpful to some of you. If you ever need to do that. Some of you are still sending in ice cream suggestions, so you guys can read those there. Today's fact of the day. This one, it may not be a big deal to you guys, but when I read it, it just blew my mind. I'd never, ever thought about it before. And then once I read it, I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. You may not think it's as interesting as I do, but I think today's fact of the day is very interesting. Here it comes. Today's fact of the day. Did you know that dragonflies have 6 legs but cannot walk? They have 6 legs, but they do not have the ability to walk. The dragonfly lands, it flies everywhere it goes. It does not walk on those legs. Crazy. And I know you may look at this picture and say, that guy's only got 5. Well, maybe he's an amputee or something. I don't know. Or maybe there's just one hidden there. But fact of the day, useless fact of the day, just in case you want to start a conversation somewhere. Dragonflies have 6 legs but cannot walk. And so, yeah, there you go. Dragonflies. Crazy stuff. Let's see here. Azariah, Katie says Tillamook's Reese's or Moose Track. Sounds delicious. And I enjoy those things as well. Ice cream is good stuff. Let's go to the book of Ecclesiastes. If you happen to have a copy of God's Word with you there, you can open it up because we're going to look through. We're going to try to finish up chapter 4. We got through the end of chapter 3 and the first part of chapter 4 last time we were together. And we're going to try to finish up chapter 4. When we were finishing up last time we talked about chapter 4, we kind of closed with a couple of thoughts. One of those was this: we can't always explain life, but we can experience life, and we will either endure it or enjoy it. We ended up with one of those thoughts the last time we were together, because a lot of what Solomon is trying to do in the book of Ecclesiastes is trying to make sense of everything. He's trying to figure out all the conundrums and all the issues and all the problems of the world, and everything doesn't make sense to him. And the reality is, we will not always be able to make sense of life. We are not God. But we will experience life. And we can choose to either endure that life, or we can choose to enjoy that life. One of the things that we talked about last week as well is that we could take, or the last time we were together, we can take everything we want to from this life, but you must pay for it. Pay for it. Working. He paid for it with his own, with really destroying his own self. And so, when we finished up, we talked about this person who was balanced. Who it was better to have gain in one hand and quietness in the other. We talked about that word of balance. We were in the marketplace, and Solomon was going through the marketplace and looking at all the different people. We looked at the industrious man who was working hard to keep up with the Joneses, and then we looked at the idle man who led his life led to self-destruction, and then we looked at the integrated man who was living this balanced life. But there was one more person to look at, and there were 2 more places to go. We've been to the courtroom, we've been to the marketplace. We saw in the marketplace, we saw the industrious man, we saw the idle man, we saw the integrated man. But today we're going to look at one more, and we're going to look this evening at the independent man. At the independent man. Let's read together in Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Let's read verses 7 through 8. It says this. It says, "There is one alone, and there is not a second. Yea, he hath neither child nor brother. Yet is there no end of all his labor, neither is his eye satisfied with riches, neither saith he, For whom do I labor, and bereave my soul of good? This is also vanity, yea, it is sore travail." So here's a person who is actually working hard, and he's doing these things, and he's gaining here from his labor riches and all of these different kinds of things. But at the end of the day, he has nobody to share it with. There's nobody to share it with. He stays busy, but he's so busy he can't actually enjoy anything. And then when he dies, there's nobody to share all of his stuff with. It seems to him that it's all vanity, which brings me to an important question as we think about the independent man and as we read these verses. I think a question that we ought to ask ourselves, and maybe be helpful for some of you to answer this question tonight, and that is the question, why? I think we ought to ask ourselves the why question a lot. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I saying what I'm saying? Why am I going where I'm going? Why are we? What's the why behind all of this? And for these people who are working hard, and working hard is a great trait to have, but one of the reasons we need to ask ourselves, one of the questions we need to ask ourselves is why? Why am I working so hard? The industrious man. And by the way, answer that question. Maybe you've done this before. Maybe you've thought through the philosophy of your work ethic. By the way, that's what a philosophy is. It's kind of the why behind the doing what you do. The industrious man was at least providing employment for other people. The idle man, while he wasn't working, at least he for a small time had some sort of leisure. But the independent man doesn't have any of those things. He has no leisure. He's working by himself. He's working hard, but he's always by himself. He doesn't want to share with anybody. When he dies, he's not going to have anybody to share it with. He's just working, and at the end of the day, he's going, why? Why am I working so hard? Again, I'll sit here and say there's nothing wrong with working hard. As a matter of fact, we ought to work hard. But maybe you've thought through this, and maybe you want to give an answer to that. Maybe you want to tell why you work as hard as you do. Or maybe you want to share some sort of encouragement or biblical answer about this is, as believers, this is why we should work this way. I know that's a little bit more difficult than your favorite ice cream, but I want you to think about that for just a second before we leave the independent man. Because we're going to leave the marketplace here in just a minute. I won't wait real long for answers, but maybe somebody has thought through this a little bit and wants to share some thoughts to challenge us on that idea of why we work so hard. We ought to work hard, but why? What's the reason? What should be the motivation behind that hard work? And I will say this: I believe that God wants us to labor. But I think he wants us to labor with the right spirit and for the right reasons. With the right spirit and for the right reasons. But again, we've looked at the industrious man, we looked at the idle man, we've looked at the integrated man, now we look at the independent man. So Anita asks, are you talking about working at our jobs? Definitely I'm talking about working at your jobs, definitely. Because right now, again, within the context of what we're doing here, these people are in the marketplace. These people are laboring at their own job. Whether that's at your business, whether that's maybe you're a builder, maybe you're an educator, maybe you're a salesman. I know some here are drivers. Maybe you're a pastor. What's the why behind working so hard? So Azariah and Cassie both chime in here. Azariah says to glorify God in everything that we do. Colossians 3:23, Cassie says, and whatsoever you do it heartily as unto the Lord and not unto men. And then Anita shares some just very practical reasons, right? So we do this labor so that we could and by the way, I believe that can be glorifying to God. Certainly the paying down of debt and getting into a better financial position in that way. So again, with the idea of being able to turn around and glorify God and being able to turn around and doing some of the things that Fred and Colleen mentioned here to be able to help others and to use the gifts that God has given us, again, to turn around and use those for His glory. And so I think that's an important thing, maybe at times for us to just stop. Because sometimes we can get in the rat race and we can get in the working hard and doing all the labor and just remind ourselves that hey, this is what we're doing. It would be a really helpful. I know George may be talking about loose connection, but the camera goes in the same place, Facebook and YouTube. It's the same. It's all in the same connection. The only place that it differs is on the computer screen. All the feed and everything. So at this point, just to let you know, Terry says, yeah. So you don't want to become dependent upon other people as you grow older. Fred Clayton there talks about kind of being a testimony issue. You want to be known as somebody that has a good work ethic. It's So I think it's important for us to take some time to think through that. What do people, or not what do people think about, but why? Why do I work so hard? But let's move from the marketplace and let's move to the highway, and that's kind of the best way that I could think to kind of encapsulate where Solomon goes now. So we go from the courtroom to the marketplace, and now he goes to what we have labeled as the highway. Verses 9 through 12, maybe some of the most well-known verses in all of the book of Ecclesiastes, says this, verses 9 through 12. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him that is alone when he falleth. For he hath not another to help him up. Again, if 2 lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if 1 prevail against him, 2 shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Again, these are very familiar verses, and again, we're not in the mind of Solomon, but as we kind of look at the flow of this passage, I think maybe his experience with the independent man, this man who is all by himself, this man who has labored by himself, that when he dies has nobody to share his labor with, now kind of makes him begin to think about the importance of others, the importance of friendship, the importance and the value of doing things together. And as I was reading these verses, I had this question, and I'm going to ask it. And when I ask it, I want you to reply, and I'm going to read through some of the other answers that some of you put here on the screen concerning our other question. Here's the question, though, I want us to consider when we look at Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. And it is this question, and there's going to be maybe 2 of them. Why are friendships important? And I'm going to follow that up with a second question. You can mix and match. You can answer one or the other. Here's the follow-up question. The follow-up question is, what is the value in doing things together? What's the value in having shared experiences? So it's a twofold question. Why are friendships important, first of all? And what is the value in doing things together? In having shared experiences. You can answer one or the other. You can answer them both together, whatever you want to do. But I want to throw those out there. I'm going to go back to the other question about work because a few of you continued to answer. Eric's talked about protecting human health and environment, right? So I always, and I think it's important for us to remember when God first instructed Adam in his labor. Adam's instruction in his labor had to do with caring for and tending to the earth that God gave us. Eric also talks about how the perspective from Colossians on working hard for the Lord. And so Terry Cross also mentions about the benefits mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally to work, to labor. And so those are some good points as well. And things for us to certainly consider, wisdom for us to consider from others tonight. But I want to go back to this question in verses 9 through 12. I'm waiting for some answers on this one. Why are friendships important? What is the value in doing things together and having shared experiences together? George mentions Hebrews chapter 11 and to gather together. Many experiences are more enjoyable if shared. I have found that to be true the older I get. And for some reason, I could be wrong, but I think it's Hebrews 10, George. And I could be wrong. I'm just sitting here, but I could be wrong about that. But I think it is Hebrews 10, 25 through 27, somewhere in there. I could be wrong about. Anyway, I have told people more and more as I get older, I enjoy experiences much more than than gifts. So Cassie, a lot of times, she'll say, "What do you want for your birthday?" Or those kinds of things. Oftentimes, I value an experience with her, maybe time away somewhere, or going somewhere, doing something together. Even with my kids, my family, much more than some other things. I still enjoy gifts, don't get me wrong, but I really value experiences. Even with many of you, just enjoy being with you. I think that's why for many of us, things together. A few other things. Yeah, so Terry Michelle put in there Hebrews 10:25. I thought that was the case. Um, the Claytons mentioned we can help each other. It can be very discouraging if you think you're the only one going through something, but you can get strength from others. There's no doubt about that, having those shared experiences. They also mention they can support you. Um, Anita talks about it's important who I'm with more than what I'm doing. So she talks about going to the coast is much better shared with other people than being alone. And I think we all know that there are times where we enjoy being alone, right? You just need a little bit of alone time. I need some time to think, or place to read, or pray, or those kinds of things. Um, but I think many of us understand that sharing those experiences are just much more valuable. The Bible talks about iron sharpening iron. Um, uh, so Terry Cross says it keeps the fish from getting bigger when there's a witness, right? It starts off this big and then it gets hey. Uh, we think about, and they bring up the Claytons bring a good example of Adam and Eve. When God created Adam and it was perfect, He still said it's not good. It's not good. Think about that. In all His creation, the very first time where He didn't say it's good or it's very good was He looked at Adam and said it is not good for man to be alone. And so he made somebody to share that. We learn things that we can't learn. Terry Cross mentions from when we're in isolation. And so I think it's very, and I think the last 12 months has also shown a light on how important it is to have shared experiences, how important it is to be with other people and to have and to build and to pour into friendships. And let me say this, I know not everybody is outgoing. I know that not everybody is an extrovert, but we can all do a little bit more to try to cultivate, to do our part to cultivate better, deeper, stronger friendships. We are meant to be relational people. I know some people maybe more than others, but again, I think the last 12 months has very much proven how important that is. Now, let's walk through these couple of verses here really quick together, and let's think about some of these things for just a second. And we're going to go 9, 10, 11, 12, and I just want you to think about what's the main sentiment, what's the main idea behind each one of these verses. Verse 9 says this: 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. You know what? I think every single one of us can agree that 2 are oftentimes better than 1 because you can get more work done. Not all the time. I'm one of those people sometimes where I'm going, you know what? I get it done better and quicker if I do it by myself. But how many of you have ever been stuck doing a difficult job and it was made easier? Somebody to talk to, somebody maybe that would encourage you, and walk you through those things. That's right. Many hands make light work. That's the whole point of verse 9. Now, verse 10 goes on and says, "For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up." this is where kind of that whole idea, the whole idea of the highway is brought in. Many of these roads that would be near Jerusalem, especially as you're traveling from city to city or town to town, they could be very rocky and very dangerous and very steep. And at times, people would genuinely fall off of the road and they would fall into deep places. And sometimes they would break bones or they would sustain injuries. And when you're by yourself, there's nobody there to help. There's nobody there to reach down and pull you out. There's nobody there to go and get help. And by the way, can I say this is true physically, but it's also true spiritually. It's also true spiritually. I've said it before and I'll say it again. While each one of us individually have a personal relationship with God through His Son Jesus Christ. That's my relationship with God. Through His Son Jesus Christ. That's the Holy Spirit working in me. That's my relationship to God. And you have your own individual relationship with God. I want you to hear clearly what I'm about to say. While we all have our own personal relationship with God, our spiritual walk and our spiritual growth was never intended to be an individual endeavor. You were never meant to do it by yourself. Yes, there are things you need to read the Word of God and feed yourself. You need to spend time in prayer by yourself. You need to cultivate spiritual disciplines by yourself. Okay? But we were meant to do it in community, to encourage one another, to lift one another up, to at times challenge one another, to rebuke one another, to pray for one another, to bear one another's burdens. There were so many one another's in the Bible. So many of you are mentioning here, teamwork makes the dream work. I tell my basketball team that all the time. Teamwork makes the dream work. Jobs that are not necessarily fun can be made better when you have someone to share that work with. Let's keep moving through these verses here. Verse 11 says, again, if two lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? Some people may think, well, couldn't he just carry some extra blankets? Couldn't he maybe throw a few more heated blankets or things like that into the back of his car? Well, remember, back in these days when they were traveling from town to town or city to city, anything that they had, especially if there was some issues with without an animal, they didn't have a donkey or something like that. All of those things, those people would have to carry on their own. Now, I'm hearing here that our video is gone. The slides are still showing. Our audio is good. Let's see here. Sure enough, let's see what's going on here. This is strange. Let's see what happens. I do not know what has happened here. That is very interesting. Give me 1 second here and see if we can find out what happened to our video. Here's the question. Is the same thing true on Facebook? Facebook, I'm going to guess Facebook has no video either. So that's really weird. I do not know what has happened. I've checked all of my connections, and all of my connections are good. So that is really strange. And when I pull up ours, I see that that's the case here too. That video has disappeared. Let's see what's going on here. Well, we could potentially use this camera right now. That's not what I would like to do. Matter of fact, my other camera has completely disappeared now. So that is really strange. Anyway, well, how about this? Can you see this video now? It is obviously not as good a quality of video, so I could not restart the computer because then I'd have to do the entire thing. So this is actually webcam video, not, or computer camera, not the other camera. So we may finish this one this way. Yeah. So anyway, again, just as a reminder, especially to George, this is a one-man machine. I can't run the show and do all of these things at the same time. So there have to just be things we'll have to figure out at some other time because I am in this room by myself. So, well, we'll just do it via this camera for right now and see if we can't keep moving forward. And we'll try this. So here we go. Verse 11, actually, yes. So verse 11 talks about comfort for each other. Again, they could bring blankets, they could bring all these other things, but those things ended up being a burden for them. There were more things that they had to carry when they traveled. Whereas with this, when you're with somebody else, you can use their warmth to stay warm, and that can comfort somebody else. Verse 12. Let's go to verse 12. Verse 12 says, if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to travel alone, especially at night. So most people would travel together in groups because there was safety in numbers. There was safety in numbers, and so it could provide somebody to help you when you're down, when you're hurt, physically or spiritually. It can provide comfort. It can provide safety. There are so many things that are positive whenever you do them together with other people. Now, did you notice? Maybe you didn't. So I'm going to read them all together. Do you notice the movement in numbers, in the numerals from verses 8 through 12? Take note of them. Take note of the numbers as we move through verses 8 through 12. Ready? Here we go. Take note. There is one alone, and there is not a second. Yea, he hath neither child nor brother, yet is there no end of all his labor, neither is his eye satisfied with riches, neither saith he, for whom do I labor and bereave my soul of good? That is also vanity, and it is sore travail. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if two lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Did you notice the progression there? It starts off with one. And then it says, you know what? Two are better than one. One is alone. One's all by himself. Two are better than one. And a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Okay? So, here's the question. How did those thoughts apply to our lives today? One alone, two better than one, threefold cord not quickly broken. Can you take that kind of progression in numbers from verses 8 through 12? And by the way, if I'm not looking at this camera, it's because I'm so used to looking at this camera up here. So I may be looking above you, and I'm not doing that intentionally. But I want you to think about that for just a second tonight, okay? And I know we're getting ready to land this plane here as we get towards the end of this chapter. But how can we apply this idea? We see threefold cord is not quickly broken. Think about it for a second. Um, so, so the Hearts mentions there's synergy with more than one person. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Yeah, and so I think it's 10 can chase 100, but 100 can chase 10,000, and that's so very true. That's I just and I've shared this sentiment before. That's one of the things that for me was really frustrating about coronavirus, because this past March at Pioneer, I felt like we always had little buildups. Our growth has always been the way, kind of, maybe not exactly the way I wanted it to be, but I was always encouraged by it because it was slow, but it was always upward, and then it would plateau, and then it would go upward, and then it would plateau, and it would always go up. It was a slow creep, but it was always heading in the right direction. But at the beginning of 2020, that is the first time, and Terry uses the word synergy. That's the first time I really felt like we were. It wasn't like we were pushing the stone and it was just turning over once. I felt like we were actually getting more people pushing the rock, pushing the stone to get it to start rolling, and I felt like we had a lot of potential for a lot of synergy to really get Pioneer rolling as we started 2020, and some of that came to a halt because of COVID. And again, I know these things are under the Lord's control, but that's one of those things. Is we started with more people, into the vision and into the work and into the labor and taking part and owning it for themselves, and it's always very, very helpful. I've always thought that the third chord was when two people were both focused on God, He would hold them together even better than they could by themselves. There's no doubt about that. Every time you add a person, you have less than the amount of labor per person, and that is very, 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 very true. So, and you're welcome to continue to add thoughts to this, but we're going to keep moving here. So Solomon reaches this destination. Wherever the highway is taking him, he reaches his destination, and actually we know where the destination leads him. It leads him to the last place. We've gone from the courtroom to the marketplace to the highway, and now he ends at the palace. Look at verses 13 through 16, and I want you to take note of the very first word of verse 13. I think it's an important word in Ecclesiastes and Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Verse 13 says, better. We're going to come back to that word. Better is a poor and a wise child than an old and foolish king, who will no more be admonished. For out of prison he cometh to reign, whereas also he that is born in his kingdom becometh poor. I considered all the living which walk under the sun, which with the second child that shall stand up in his stead. There is no end of all the people, even of all that have been before them. They also that come after shall not rejoice in him. Surely this is also vanity and vexation of spirit. Again, notice that word, better. He starts the verse 13 with the word better. Can you find other places really quickly in this chapter? Just in chapter 4, where it uses that word better really quickly. If you happen to see them, type the verses there, at least where you see it, chapter 4 and verse whatever. And I'll give you the first one. The very first one is in verse 3, where it says, better to have never lived than to be these oppressed people. He says that in verse 3. Other places, we just read one just a minute ago. He uses the word better. I'll give you just a second because I know this goes a little bit behind. The one I just shared with you here is Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and verse 3 says, yea, better is he than both they, which hath not been, who hath not seen the evil work that is done under the sun. Verse 9, good job, Eric. Verse 9 also says this. It says, two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. And so, I would certainly agree. It's better to not deal with oppression. Verse 9, two are better than one. Another one, verse 6, better is a handful with quietness than both the hands full with travail and vexation of spirit. Two are better than king, who will no more be admonished. What's really happening here is Solomon kind of ends this chapter as we end our time together really tonight here in just a moment. He ends this chapter with an illustration, with a story, uh, really about the instability and the fickleness of popularity, especially within politics. He talks about, really, the picture he's painting here is a king who, in his early reign, would listen to his counselors. He would take the advice of his helpers, and he was a good king. But the older he got, he began to stop doing that. He began to stop listening to any of his advisors. He stopped listening to any of his help. And he became very prideful in his old age. And possibly even, I don't know, possibly even senile. But what had happened was the people around him really began to feed into the kind of king that he was and how great of a king he was. And he kept telling them how awesome he was. I don't need to do anything else. But the story doesn't end there. The story here tells us that there's a young person who's actually in prison. That young person gets out of prison, and he man appears to be a wise leader. I think, what's the prison again? What's the point? Again, verse 14 says, "For out of prison he cometh to reign, whereas also he that is born in his kingdom becometh poor." Basically, what Solomon is getting at is, he that was poor can become rich. This guy that was in prison, all of a sudden became king. He went from poor to rich. And he that was rich, the king, all of a sudden becomes poor because he's kicked out of the throne and somebody else takes it. It's a reminder. Solomon is reminding us in this moment that wealth and position are no guarantee of success. And poverty and seeming failure are not immovable barriers to success. Just because somebody's popular, just because somebody has position, just because somebody has wealth, doesn't mean that they're successful. And just because somebody is in poverty, and just because someone fails or has failed in the past, doesn't mean that they will forever be a failure. Wisdom was key. Notice that the story doesn't end. This young man is, or this old king is cheered at the beginning as being this wise king, but then he's despised at the end. And as we close out some of these things, there are some thoughts that I want you to think about here as we finish. Okay, Solomon learned a very, very, very important lesson in chapter 4. When he looked up to God, he could see that God was in control of life and all of its varied experiences. God was in control when he looked up. When he looked inside of himself, he realized that man was an eternal being. We're made for eternity. And that God would make all things beautiful in his time. When he looked ahead, he saw death. He realized that death was coming. And when he looked around, he saw that life was very varied and complex. There was the courtroom. There was the marketplace, right? There was the highway. There was the palace. And all of these varied experiences of life that are not easy to explain. And at the end of it, he came to this realization, and we'll end here. No matter where you look, you see trials and problems. And people could use some encouragement. We need one another. Whether it's in the courtroom, or the marketplace, or the highway, or the palace. No matter where he looked. Yes, the people were different. The experiences were different. What people had, their resources were different in all of these situations. But no matter where Solomon looked, the courtroom, the marketplace, the highway, the palace, In all of those places, he saw trials and problems, and he saw some people that could use some encouragement. So it's a reminder when we read Ecclesiastes chapter 4, we need one another. Very simply, I need you. You need me. We need each other. We need to encourage each other because we all deal with trials and problems. No matter, and you may think, well, that person's in the palace. They must not have any issues. Wrong. Well, those people over there, man, they've got this great job and it must be going wonderful and it must just be the perfect life. Wrong. Well, these people over here, they have the power and prestige and the politics and everything must be wrong. Well, these people over here, they're walking the highway. They're traveling all the time, man. Oh, boy, I'd love to travel the world and do everything and travel and go everywhere. You know, they must have it wrong. No matter what it is, no matter where you look, there will be trials and problems. That is part of life. Now, I don't or most of us are grown adults. Some of us are teenagers and kids, but we understand it. Life has its trials. Life has its difficulties. Let's not skirt around that act if it's not true. That doesn't mean life is awful. I love life. I love my wife. I love my kids. I love my church. I love you all. I love many of the wonderful things. I love what God has given me to do in my labor, in my work, in my time here on earth. There's so many things that I love, and I'm so thankful for. But we all have trials. We have problems. We could all probably sit here the rest of the night and list them in our lives. We don't need to do that. But can I tell you something? We can be an encouragement to somebody else. One isn't that great, but two are better than one. And a threefold cord is not quickly broken. We need one another. We need to encourage one another. Can I encourage you this week? Wherever you go, encourage somebody. I know maybe some of you are friends with them on Facebook. I think Nita, I saw you commented on this week. Adam Steed had made a mention of the fact that he actually intentionally tries not to use self-checkout places. He intentionally tries not to use the ATM at a bank. He intentionally tries to get in line at the grocery store. He intentionally tries to go into the bank to try to interact with people, because he says, if I use the self-checkout or the ATM, I don't get to interact with people, so I can't be an encouragement to them. I can't ask them how their day is going. I can't be a witness to them if I'm just, he said, and also, there's potential those people to lose their job. The reality is, we need to understand that God has put us here as believers, people who have real, genuine, true hope, to, you've probably heard this before, to be hope dealers, right? To be the people who give encouragement. And I know we all deal with our own trials and problems, and it's very, 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 very. But can I tell you something? We can be a huge help and blessing to somebody if we just think, Lord, help me encourage somebody today. Lord, I believe with all my heart you have somebody out here today that needs me, that needs a smile, that needs a hello, that needs a conversation, that needs a, hey, I want you to know God loves you and I do too, that just needs some sort of word of encouragement. And I hope that we can be those people. As we finish out Ecclesiastes chapter 4, I hope it's been a help to you. I've enjoyed it. We'll come back to Ecclesiastes chapter 5 next week. As we're closing out, though, we got just a couple minutes. Any closing thoughts about Ecclesiastes chapter 4? I don't have a recap for Ecclesiastes chapter 5 for what we're going to look at next week, but we'll jump into it when we get there. I'll wait for just a second for any closing thoughts from Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Thank you again for hanging with us through all of the technical difficulties. Again, sometimes it's audio, sometimes with it. Settings have been changed. Nothing's been pushed or changed. So something very strange happened. I don't know what it is. That's right. my final thought, and Terry and Michelle mentioned there from Luke 21 and verse 28, to keep looking up. Life under the sun can become really, really depressing, but it doesn't have to be. We can keep looking up, and we can share the encouragement that we see from the Lord with other people, and I hope we'll do that together throughout the week. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for hanging in with us, and we will see you guys next